educating the girl child who then grows up to be the woman is not just the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do. I have with me a co-moderator in the person of Comfort Sakoma. Without wasting any more time, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am going to put my first question to all of the panelists to take the question one after the other in 2 minutes, beginning with Maria Brewer and going along the line. Given Nigeria's current insecurity challenges, what are 2 most urgent steps that you would recommend that we take to address the issues of kidnapping, abductions, rape, and targeted murder of women and girls? What are your 2 most urgent recommendations given our current security challenges? They can't hear you. Would you like to step up to?
Hello, can you hear me now? Oh, that's much better, much better, much better. All right, first of all, I just wanted to thank you all. I'd like to thank the National Center for Women Development, Friends Africa, for organizing this summit and for inviting me to participate. And I'm very honored to be here to join Nigeria's highly successful and influential leaders this afternoon. As you know, the United States is very committed to supporting your efforts to educate Nigerian girls and to promoting the empowerment of women in the political life, economic life, and civil society of every Nigerian community. We all know that educating girls isn't just the right thing to do, and it is the right thing to do, but it's also one of the best ways to strengthen communities for every citizen, male and female alike. Research backs this up. When women are actively engaged, communities are more peaceful, more secure, families are healthier, economies grow faster, and governments are more accountable. So to answer your specific question, we're on this issue, we're taking the long view in that educating women, treating women as equal members of society from birth to death, from every aspect. Whether that's educating them, giving them the same opportunities as the boy child, giving them the same health opportunities, immunization, taking care of them as the movie we just watched showed in terms of nutrition. That's all part of this. Having girls being treated as part of the spoils of war in a civil war is unfortunately an outgrowth of this understanding that women are not equal to men, and that is something that we...
Thank you so very much, Maria. Your 2 minutes are up.
Oh, my 2 minutes are up. All right. Well, thank you.
So the same question goes to all the panelists concerning the insecurity challenges in Nigeria. What are the most, and we're going along in... Yeah. So what...
She wants to pass the question
All right. So what are the most urgent next steps that we will take to address these issues? Thank you.
This one as well. My colleague wanted to pass the question and wait to the there's a very, very simple, practical things I think my colleague before just mentioned is the value and respect of women. I think that what has happened in our society is we have actually lost value of human life. We have lost the accountability. There needs to be consequences for these actions, and there needs to be community responsibility. So I think that it's very difficult for us as such a big nation to rely on the government alone. So if we're talking about the responsibility, safety and security of our girls and women, we women and we as a community need to also take on the ownership and the responsibility. That's the first part. The second thing is I believe that we have underutilized the mobile phone and ICTs. I'm going to talk about that later, but I think in this hall, how many people have a mobile phone? Everybody, every lady has one? Very good. And I'm sure the younger girls, they probably have two. So the mobile phone is a wonderful tool for us to track where our girls are and for our girls to reach out to us for help. Thank you.
Let me start by congratulating the organizers of this meeting, the Office of the First Lady, my sister's office, Friends of Africa. I feel very delighted to have been invited here. Very briefly about the question asked, 2 minutes is almost over, but I thought that since I'm very happy to be here, I had to say that I'm happy and grateful for the invitation on behalf of UN Women. In terms of security, the way I see it, I think my colleagues have talked about really involving everybody. The women have a role, the men have a role, the children have a role, the boys and girls have a role. So in terms of really trying to understand what is happening in most of our African countries, is understanding the root causes. We cannot blame colonialism, we cannot blame our religious beliefs, we cannot blame our culture, but deep understanding all of these issues is very critical. We cannot leave it alone to the government. We cannot leave it alone to the traditional rulers. So my view is that if there's a war, all of us are affected. And as we know, it's the women, children, girls, and also young boys. So in terms of helping government, we should have a partnership to really ensure that we are talking frankly about what causes insecurity. I come from Kenya and we have insecurity challenges. So we need to share about how to address these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's just to let our panelists know that this is just our kickoff question. I will repeat the question. Given Nigeria's current insecurity challenges, just give us two recommendations as to how we can address the issues around insecurity for our girls and women regarding kidnappings, abductions, murder, etc., during violent conflicts.
Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I have to deviate a little bit. I was introduced as the doctor. I've passed being anybody's daughter. I'm Justice Victoria Okobi, retired Justice of the National Industrial Court. Before I was appointed a judge, I was the Director for Women and Children over 15 years, and a foundation member and one of the key staff that worked towards the establishment of the Federal Ministry of Women. And I was the first Nigerian woman to be elected into the board of ISTRO. ISTRO is the United Nations Institute for Training, Research, and Advancement of Women. I think I need to give this background so that you know who I really am, not the daughter of my father. Thank you very much. Okay, now on the, do I sit down or get up? Okay, now, talking about security or the present security challenges we have in this country, I approach it from two ways. Number one, if we want to talk about the Chibok girls, there has to be need for provision of physical protection of our girls. Schools should be fenced. Schools should have security guards. Schools should have matrons or people living in the dormitory with the girls. It embarrasses me to hear that 200 and something girls were abducted. Nobody can tell us what happened. The principal, the teachers. So we need to fence all our girls' secondary schools. Individuals fence their houses. So I don't know why we should expose our girls to a compound without fence. That is number one. Secondly, the community has a responsibility. Responsibility in the sense that these are people's children. There's a neighborhood. I don't believe the schools are built in wildernesses. Even when we went to school in the 50s, our schools were fenced. We had security. So please, the first thing is to provide physical facilities to protect our children.
Thank you very
And
much.
the involvement of the community towards protection of our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just 2 priority points, please.
Well, I align myself with what everybody has said, and I'm going to be very brief. For me, the first thing we need to do is to educate our boys to grow up to be responsible men. The kidnappings are done by the men. The raping is done by the men. So it all starts from the home. Bring up your son to be a responsible man. So that's a base point. And the second point, teach your girls taekwondo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Mojisola Odeku, maternal health expert with reproductive health bias. Actually, when we were doing our side talk and she said taekwondo, my first priority was actually life skills. And I'm using that from the reproductive health lens. Every child must have a life skill of dealing with emergencies. If somebody is going to attack you or rape you, you must have life skills to be able to defend yourself. And that's core. We need to scale that up. It's part of the family life HIV/AIDS education that is with us, which has not been scaled up. We need to also review the laws that are protecting our girls. I recall many years ago, we dug up reproductive health laws in Nigeria and found out that it's so obsolete. Thank God the Child's Rights Act and bills are up, but there are so many other. Gender-based violence, the CEDAW, there's so many. So let's look at those ones that impinges on our girls, make these laws updated, make our girls aware of the laws that are protecting them. They have a right. You have the right to speak out, and you have a right to be treated fairly and justly. Your human rights perspective is good.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, alarm system, I'm rounding up. We must ensure that we also set up alarm system within the environment where our girls either live or go to school. There must be an alarm system. I don't have solution to that. The security people will be able to step in, but we must plan that into existing infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you to our esteemed panelists. What we have done is simply to set the tone. Unless we are safe and secure, only then can we talk about education, talk about empowerment, talk about entrepreneurship, and every other aspect of development. I'm sure that collectively, there are 2 or more priority areas that they have mentioned today have given us a sort of menu as to how we can proceed. Standing on the last point that we heard from Moji, I would like to ask a pointed question to our Honorable Justice. Justice, what are the current strategies, laws, or policies, be they at federal, state, or local government level, that we have to specifically address gender-based violence, domestic violence, child abuse that has already been referred to?
Thank you. First of all, I don't know if you are aware there is a national policy on child brought up by the Ministry of Women Affairs. Nigeria is a signatory and has ratified the United Nations Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. Nigeria has signed and ratified United Nations Charter on the Rights of the Child. We have also appended our signature to the African Charter on the Rights of the Child. The problem we have the laws. It's the implementation of the laws that is the issue. We have the laws. There's no discrimination against man or woman in this country. The issue is, women, are we ready to take up and fight for those rights? This is where girl child education comes in. Because if you are not educated, you may not know what those rights are. You may not have the courage or the wherewithal to fight for those rights. Nigeria has the best laws to protect women and children. The issue is implementation and enforcement.
Indeed, the issue is implementation and enforcement. I will now hand over to my colleague, co-moderator, Comfort Sakoma, who is going to take some questions on empowerment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, excellent. So we've talked about security, which we all know is very, very important. The theme of this session, the theme of this week's event, is education and the role of girl children in that process. So we're going to talk a little bit about economic empowerment and how that ultimately ties into education as well. My first question, which I'll open to the floor, is how do we review the policies relating to women empowerment to include girls, especially the need for seed funding for trained girls and youths with skills to become self-sufficient? And I believe that this question is born out of the fact that we all know about the central bank loan or grant for women, of which 60% was allocated to women. One of the sub-questions is, well, what about girls? So if we could tie answers to two of those together, that would be great. Thank you. All right, I'll start by asking the question to Mrs. Roberts. Oh, so, those are the names I have.
When I was thinking about that question, the first thing that struck me is the fact that there's a lot of focus on women, and what we're trying to do now is to refocus to include the girl child. And I'm asking myself, do we really want to encourage our girl child to start up as entrepreneurs? And what is the age band we're talking about when we're talking about girls? Because anybody under 21, I'll assume, is a girl. Now, if we're talking of little children in school, little girls in school, are we saying that we want to encourage the CBN to give loans to them? So we need to be more specific in terms of what we're talking about here. Because your question is so general. But I'm going to look at it from the perspective of the young girl who is determined that I'm not going to go to school, or I'm out of school and I want to be an entrepreneur. And then it's going to be very difficult for me to make a recommendation that the girl child should be part of what the CBN is doing, unless you're looking at it from a more global perspective. And there is a need to do that. There is a need to ensure, whilst we're talking about this topic, that we don't let the parents abdicate their responsibilities to the girl child. Because the concern for me in the kind of conversation we're having this morning, particularly the economic empowerment of the girl child, is should we really be talking about the girl child in that perspective or their parents? So maybe we need to refocus and deal with that before we talk about a CBN initiative to accommodate the girl child. Thank you very much.
And the question is, how can we ensure effective review of policies relating to women empowerment?
I say, as a foreigner, I find it a little bit difficult to answer this question, which is really a Nigerian question about how to review your internal policies. So perhaps I should yield the floor to one of my Nigerian colleagues.
Okay. No. They wrote it for you. No problem. I will answer this as I have actually read the policy, and one of the things, this is a very difficult question. I can see many young girls here. It's a challenging question and a very good one, because we are struggling with the dilemma of the young girl child who really actually isn't a child. Her life is a life of an adult in some circumstances. If she's an orphan, or if she's the child of a widow, she may be put in the circumstances where she has to become an entrepreneur. So this to me is the biggest, as a person who was born and raised in England, I know that I can't imagine a young 9-year-old making earrings and selling them like we saw yesterday. So we are in a different situation in Nigeria, so we have to be creative to identify within the policies. I believe they should actually identify what are the different types of categories of young girls that exist, what are the challenges they need, and not just give them money from the central bank, but they need the mentor to help them use the money and not get abused. The lady at the end?
We can pass it down to the end. Yeah, Mrs. Mochi Odeko.
Thank you very much. I'll take the question on reviewing policies related to women and children. In doing that, as a Nigerian, what has worked for us is using the consumer lens. I'm putting on my marketing cap here. There's a product to be sold. Who are the end beneficiaries? Whatever policies we have, first we want to make it user-friendly and reader-friendly. Downtone the language that the girl child at every level can understand it. Make sure these policies are available in different languages that even the literate, the semi-literate can understand. Now, going forward, bring such policies to the fora of young people. For example, the DG enumerated to us yesterday before this summit, there was a pre-summit where we had over 150 girls dictating the Girlifesto to us. So present this to the Girlifesto group. Like what we did during our skill building session, we said, what change do you want to see in the Nigeria of tomorrow as a girl child concerning issue 1, 2, 3, 4? Who will be the change? How will this change be? For the first time, let them give us the agenda. So bring those policies to them to dissect and to let us know which one will work out best. Secondly, looking at the issue of entrepreneur, I want to present to the House that every woman in Nigeria is an entrepreneur. Do you agree or not? We can use the structure that we have in schools of old. We used to have Boy Scouts Club, Girls Guide. Most of the skills I learned was from Girls Guide. DG, let's resuscitate that. Bring it back. Secondly, in entrepreneur, it's not just money making. A lot of our girls have ideas. I watched one science and tech trade fair where a girl child, I don't know which of the state, invented the helicopter and a generator that was powered by kerosene. I don't know if you watched it on TV. In Lagos, this was a girl child. That's a business idea. I would love the scientists to partner with such a girl child to make sure it becomes an industry manned by Nigeria, discovered by Nigeria, manufactured in Nigeria. So, concept notes coming from the girls. Let's support them to build it up, make it a business idea, and fund it. DG Ma, this is an assignment for you. Many of our girls do have that. Let's fetch them out. Let's do one or two and showcase them. So it's not just about buying and selling that women are known for. We have women as scientists, ICT experts. Let's dig them up and come up with the right concept and get CBN to put the money behind those concepts and build it up. Thank you.
Very much. A very strong point there about the importance of involving girls in the process of creating solutions for them. At this juncture, I would like to ask Justice Vicky Okobi. We've talked about the importance of involving women and girls in the conversation. From an education standpoint, how do we raise and develop empowered girls?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like us to go with one impression. Who is a girl child? A girl child is a human being who constitutes over 60% of the population and is responsible for bringing the other 40 into the world. So you see that this is a very important human being that should be taken care of. Now, I want to say something about what my co-speaker said. I'm all for entrepreneurship for the girl child, but please, the girl child has to have a basic education. A girl making earring at the age of 9. I don't want a situation where we have a Michael Jackson that all his money goes to managers, accountants, lawyers. Our girls must be properly educated while developing those talents. It's very important. We need to give our young girls basic education. After that, you know, it's just that we have a problem of continuity in this country. When the JSS system of education came up, the whole idea was after JSS 2 or 3, children now go into vocational training. We need to bring back vocational training. Everybody doesn't have to be a lawyer or a doctor. There are people with talents. But let's give them the basic before we talk of entrepreneurship. Thank you very much. Another thing is, I wish the Minister of Education were here, just as the Minister of Health was here. Because we have to look at the curriculum of our education. Education is not just reading and writing. There is a total and holistic approach to the education of the girl child. This is where everybody has a responsibility. The Nollywood, for instance. Sometimes they are doing a fantastic job. But please, some of the movies are getting a little bit westernized to our disadvantage. Our cultural values and our traditions that put us ahead of the so-called civilization is eroding. The way our young girls dress, the way they dance, please, I beg beautiful actors and actresses, bring back morality into what you show our children. It's very important. And then we should develop a curriculum where girls are taught and encouraged to bring out the best. I was in North Korea. They have a fantastic girls or children's hall. You know what they do? After school, these children go to these halls where they teach them music, everything. So you'll be surprised when a 4-year-old Chinese child plays ping pong as if he's going to Olympics. So we need to have an after-school activity for our girls. Development is just not school. It has to do with the home, the community, and please, everybody. Thank you
very much. For my final question, I'm going to redeem myself and redirect this once more to Mrs. Maria Brewer. What investment or investments is the U.S. government putting forth to empower women and girls globally and, of course, right here in Nigeria?
Sure, thank you so much for the opportunity to answer this question. I'd like to highlight a couple of programs. One is the African Women's Entrepreneurship Program called AWEP, and it tries to dismantle the obstacles to women who are trying to start a business. We have AWEP chapters in Nigeria and throughout Africa, and the idea is how to access things like the AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. We have 122 women entrepreneurs in 48 sub-Saharan countries. So these are partnerships with USAID, with firms like Intel that organize mentorships and workshops for women entrepreneurs. We also have another group called Tech Women, which is another mentoring and exchange program in 2010. And we try to connect African and Middle Eastern women leaders in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics called STEM. This is unfortunately an area in which women are generally underrepresented. We find this even in the US. Girls are steered away from the maths, away from sciences, and more into other kinds of learning. And of course, we know women are every bit as capable of men as learning this. So we're trying to capture the energy, the innovation of Nigerian women. We have a young lady by the name of Joy Agene. She applied for a Tech Women program seeking mentorship by experts in her fields of environmental technology. And she's trying to help girls in Nigeria enter these fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. So we're working with her at the Okaba Girls School to try to influence the next generation. So everything from just ensuring the girls get that primary education that everyone in Nigeria should have access to, all the way to these high-tech fields.
Thank you very much, and I would like to pass the floor over to my colleague to close. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Comfort. 2015 is an important year for Nigeria. It's our election year. We need to ask ourselves very poignant questions. Where is the space for women regarding participation in decision-making? As we ask ourselves those questions, we must also remember that for the global community, 2015 is also a very crucial year. In line with the MDGs and the United Nations post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals, how can we ensure effective empowerment and equality for our women and girls? I will put this question to the custodian of women's affairs in Nigeria at the UN, in the person of Grace Ongile of UN Women.
Thank you very much. That's a very important question. When we think of 2015, we may be just thinking of elections, but this is also a very important year because the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, will come to another level, and we are starting the post-2015. And we all do know that for our agenda of women empowerment, we are talking of goal number 3 on the MDG. Goal number 3 of the Millennium Development Goal looks at the gender inequality. Now, I hope that the facilitator will give me at least 3 minutes just to explain where we are coming from, because we have to take issue with where we're coming from. What have we done? Have we succeeded in the MDG 3? No. When we look at little successes of, say, enrollment in primary schools, Is it sustainable given the challenges women and boys are facing? No. So it's really important to be realistic and really look at the whole issue of what are the lessons we can take forward. Otherwise, our voices will be lost again as Africans. So I'm here saying that when we talk of this goal, we can only cite very little examples. When we talk of political decision, we know that many countries, including Nigeria, have less than 10% women representation in parliament. And when we talk of the importance of having our voices at decision-making levels, it is key that we need women because we understand these issues very differently because of our different roles. So what we are saying here is that the post-2015, a lot of evaluation has taken place on the MDGs, and 3 is our own gender one that cuts across all the 9. But the evaluations does indicate that we've not done well. And what are the lessons? The lessons are that we now have to have a common position, and at the UN level, there's a lot of discussions going on how Africa can have a common position. But the sad issue here is that amongst the 6 pillars laid out in the post-2015, the one that touches closely on gender is that on the central pillar, or the people-centered pillar, pillar 3. So we are arguing, particularly from consultations with various governments, that really gender agenda is so important that it cannot be lumped just as the central people's pillar. We have to single it out. And that's why at the UN level, we are advocating that gender should be a stand-alone agenda. Otherwise, we will come back, or we may not be alive, and we'll be saying that what happened? Because the gender agenda will be lost in so many other issues. So very briefly, in terms of prioritization, education is key, but the institutions are also key. And while we give attention to the girl child, we should not leave the boy child. Because we all do know that the boy child left will also cause problem to the girl child. Because the boy child will be the husband of the girl child. So if you educate your daughter up to the highest level, and then there are no boys to marry that very educated young girl, what will happen? So just in conclusion, institutions are key, but I want us to reflect and say, as parents, are we giving our daughters or our children the education that can help them really accountable in terms of competitiveness? We do know the importance of ICT, but we must say that even in promoting ICT, we should not kill the thinking of the children to be innovative. We need the institutions. We need to change as parents so that we don't say my daughter has to be a doctor, an engineer, and nothing else. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency Dr. Grace Ongile.
Now is the time to hear from our distinguished audience. We are here, Madam DG.